I've grabbed every piece of data I can get my hands on. I mean, we're taking a little bit from here, taking a little bit from there, and I'm going to give you the most up-to-date running back draft strategy to crush your redraft leagues in 2023. I'm going to be using some up-to-date Underdog ADP combined with ESPN ADP combined with historical data that we've seen since 2017 to try to figure out when we should be taking these running backs, where should we be taking these running backs, and how we can win some money. So first thing I want to look at is where league winning running backs have come from throughout history. I'm sure that we've showed you all this data enough where you kind of already get it by now. I mean, if we're going to go through and look at league winning running backs from 2017 through 2022, you'll realize the running back dead zone in the middle rounds is actually a real thing, right? I mean, just like everybody's been telling you for a couple of years now, in general, you should be grabbing your running backs in round 1, in round 2, and then probably avoiding those round 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. Because if we're looking at true league winners, these are players that had a win rate over 16.67%. That means if you were playing in a 12-team league and you drafted one of these guys, you were twice as likely to win your league compared to if you did not take them. You had 6 players in round 1 in that time period turn out to be league winners, such as CMC, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Lev Bell, and Austin Eckler. You had a couple guys from round 2. Those guys were Todd Gurley in 2017, Christian McCaffrey 2018. You had even one guy in round 3. But then after that, rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, throughout that entire range, you have like 3 guys. I mean, you had Josh Jacobs this past season. I mean, you know, in underdog drafts, we were getting him around 7. If you were playing in a traditional redraft league, instead, he was going about round 5. But nonetheless, he was a league winner there. And then if you're sliding down round 7 bid this past season as well, you had Tony Pollard turn into a league winner. In round 8 back in 2019, you had Austin Eckler turn into a league winner. And then round 10 back in 2017, you had Kareem Hunt turn into a league winner. So if you were looking at this data and you were comparing it to where the league winners come for the wide receiver position, what you would find is, in general, you want to be taking your running backs that have true legendary upside in rounds 1 and round 2. That way you can go ahead and access the CMC 400-point season, right? Now, we went through and we identified which one of these running backs have that league-winning upside in a separate video. And essentially what we are looking for from these backs is we are looking for guys that are going to have the market share numbers both as a rusher and a pass catcher and are still in their prime age range. So we want a running back coming off a season where they saw 10% or more of their team's targets on a per game perspective. And we want a running back that's coming off a season where they also saw 50% or more of their team's carries from a per game perspective. And then plus they're in that age range, essentially anywhere from 21 to 26 years old. If they hit those 3 marks, historically speaking, they've shown that they actually have the potential to be a real league winner in fantasy football. Now, we've gone through this data and I've told you before, well, in underdog drafts, it honestly is not too applicable, right? Because if you're looking at running back versus wide receiver ADP, if you're in an underdog draft, I'm sorry, you're just simply not going to be able to find wide receiver value in the middle rounds because it is so weird in those drafts if you were looking at where these running backs versus wide receivers are being drafted. For example, I mean, if we were going into those underdog drafts, you only have 3 running backs going in the first round of ADP right now. And throughout history, we've seen this be closer to about 7 or 8 on average. In round 2, you're seeing only 7 running backs go off in underdog drafts. And through history, we've seen about 12 to 14 backs off the board by that point. Round 3, you're seeing 12 running backs through history. We're used to seeing about 17 by that point. Round 4, you have 14 guys. Round 5, you have 19 guys. Round 6, you have 21 guys. So simply stated, what ends up happening if you were looking at these underdog drafts in comparison to what you have throughout all of fantasy football history, you actually have strong options for the first time ever getting pushed down to the middle rounds. In those underdog drafts, which you know we're streaming every single night, I'm able to pick up Dameon Pierce at the very end of the 6th round. I'm able to get Miles Sanders at the very end of the 6th round. And at that price point, hell, I think that the optimal draft strategy this season should be actually to target those middle round running backs. But is that something that we should be doing in your traditional redraft league? Probably not. Because if we compare this Underdog ADP to what you have with ESPN ADP, it's almost just completely flipped. Now, the best example that we can give is going to round 4. But real quick, before we dive into these ESPN leagues for everybody in their redraft format, if somehow, some way you're not already drafting on Underdog, if you want to check out a ton of cool player props, get into a draft with us every single day. You know we're streaming on the live stream until the season starts. Underdog Fantasy has just launched a new massive weekly winners tournament, $15 buy-in, and then every single week, the top team is getting paid out $20,000 through the course of the season. It's like a $3.5 million prize pool. We'll be drafting a ton of them very soon, and if you want to get in a draft with us, you can always go sign up with promo code FLOCK. They're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Going to get my 2023 fantasy football rankings as well as a free trial to flockfantasy.com with promo code FLOCK in the link in the live chat description. Available in damn near every state since it's best ball, no time commitment at all during the year. So I drafted over 700 teams and won $150,000 last season. But if we're comparing that Underdog ADP to ESPN ADP, I want to specifically go to the end of round 4. Because if you are looking at ESPN versus Underdog ADP this season, you're seeing by the end of round 4 on ESPN, 19 running backs already off the draft board. In comparison, looking at Underdog, you only had 14. Now, if we're going to go to round 6, you kind of see this continued trend. In round 6, you have already had 27 running backs off the draft board in ESPN leagues compared to only 21 in these Underdog drafts. So what you're seeing is in those Underdog drafts in particular, you are not able to find middle round wide receiver value. Instead of actually having exciting wide receivers in round 7, 8, and 9, what's happening is people are having to reach on guys like Cortland Sutton, Michael Thomas, Rashad Bateman. In that range, I would rather be taking someone like Javonte Williams. I'd rather take the swing on a running back there. But can you have that same draft strategy in your traditional redraft league? Probably not. We probably need to tweak this a bit, right? Because if I'm going and looking at this ESPN ADP, specifically, I want to be going to the middle rounds because the middle round value that you're going to be able to get, depending on the draft platform that you are in, that is going to dictate what our early round draft strategy should be. We need to look at what we can do later on in the draft to figure out what we should do right now in the draft. And if we're going over and looking at the end of round 4, say in round 5, in these ESPN drafts, Christian Watson is a round 5 pick. You're able to go through and grab Terry McLaurin in round 5. You're able to grab Calvin Ridley at the 5-6 turn. Jerry Jeudy in round 6. Kyle Pitts in round 6. I mean, these are some incredible wide receiver values that are just really non-existent on Underdog. If we slide down this draft board even more, this will become very apparent when you're seeing Drake London go at pick 76 in these ESPN leagues. You're seeing Michael Pittman 81, Brandon Ayuk 82. So this is just like what we've seen all through history, right? I mean, you could throw George Pickens in at pick 89. You're seeing wide receivers with real upside that could make that second year jump or could actually turn into league winners down here in rounds 6, 7, and 8. And if we go back to what we've seen all throughout history with running backs in this range, generally, those guys aren't super strong values. Now, like I said, since Underdog ADP is flipped, it's going to be a little bit different where the running backs in round 6, 7, and 8 now in Underdog drafts are very compelling. However, if we're going to compare those guys to what we have now in these ESPN leagues, I mean, you're not really having that extreme discount on some running backs that you'd like to see. David Montgomery on ESPN's pick 77. Akers is 71. DeAndre Swift is 59. I mean, Dalvin Cook, 66. In general, you're not getting the compelling values on the running backs in the middle rounds. I mean, maybe really the only argument you could make is J.K. Dobbins pick 67. If you like Dobbins pick 67, I would say 100% go for it. So what I'm actually probably going to look to do in your casual redraft league is I'm probably going to pivot and say the draft strategy that worked in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and somewhat still in 2022. Didn't work as well, but still it's right there. Is very compelling for you to have in your redraft leagues this next season. If you wanted to go through in the early rounds and slam in running back, I think that is great. Now, if we're looking at potential league winners and where these guys go in ESPN drafts in particular, there are 3 big names that I think if you want to start off your draft with, you are more than welcome to do so. First guy being Christian McCaffrey. We saw a Jeep guy in the team that we just broke down able to get Christian McCaffrey at either pick 5 or pick 6. But regardless, in the middle of round one. Really like the pick if you're playing in a league where you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. There, I would love to grab someone that has that elite level ceiling where we've seen the man get to 400 points in a single season before. And honestly, I would be just fine with you as well if you were drafting at the end of round one, if you wanted to go ahead and grab Bijan Robinson. Because Bijan Robinson, while we haven't been able to see his actual market share numbers in the NFL quite yet, we've seen that he is a running back, at least in college, that is a phenomenal pass catcher. And he projects to easily see over 10% of the Atlanta Falcons targets this next season. Plus, we know based off his frame, we know based off the team investment that Bijan Robinson's a running back that's clearly going to see more than 50% of the carries in this backfield. He's in the age range that we look for as well. So I think Bijan makes a ton of sense there at the end of round one. At the 1-2 turn, I would even consider Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. But the very compelling draft picks in my mind in these casual ESPN drafts are going to be first off with Nick Chubb at the end of the second round / middle of the second round. Nick Chubb right now is an ADP of 18. This is a running back that in those underdog drafts goes well before Derrick Henry, goes well before Saquon Barkley, goes well before Jonathan Taylor now, goes well before Josh Jacobs. However, you're getting a discount on him in these ESPN drafts. I think it's because probably the casual drafters up until this point haven't really had a good shot to understand what Kareem Hunt leaving this offense means, plus getting Deshaun Watson for an entire season with Nick Chubb coming into this next year. Now, Nick Chubb doesn't have the typical profile that we are looking for with those true league-winning running backs because Nick Chubb doesn't get to a 10% market share this past season as a pass catcher. But with the departure of Kareem Hunt, if they decide not to bring in another running back in Cleveland, it's very easy to see him expanding his role as a pass catcher based off the splits we've seen with and without Kareem Hunt previously. Now, going over to round 3, I think, honestly, even if we were to start off our draft with CMC Nick Chubb in that casual redraft league, as we've seen with the historical data, still being able to find league-winning running backs in round 3, I'm fine going ahead and grabbing a running back there in round 3 as well. And I know this is crazy. This is the exact opposite of what you would see me do in an underdog draft. Y'all know in an underdog draft, like I've said time and time again, running back value is all over the place in the middle rounds. So I'm going to slam wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. So I don't have to be the guy drafting Courtland Sutton in round 8. I don't have to be the guy drafting Michael Thomas in round 9. But here, I think we can get away with some of those wide receivers in that range. So I would actually be fine with pivoting over to a running back, particularly if we were looking at my favorite option, price adjusted. I think you're going to look at Ramondre Stevenson at pick 33. With Ramondre Stevenson here, this is a running back that checks all those boxes from a league winner that we are looking at. Ramondre Stevenson's a running back that saw more than 50% of his team's carries this past season in New England. This is a running back that had over a 10% team target share. At times, he was used as prime Alvin Kamara. I mean, hell, you could say he was used as prime Austin Eckler as a running back that was arguably the number one receiving down option, not even just at the running back position, but also with the receivers as well in his own offense. If you're able to get him at the end of the third round, makes a lot of sense because if we map out this draft, right? If we start off, say, CMC, Nick Chubb, Ramondre Stevenson, or maybe you say, Mason, I'm so excited about those running backs I'm going to get in round 2, round 3 here. I'm going to go Kelsey in round 1. Maybe CMC is already off the board. Hell, even if we start Kelsey, Chubb, then Ramondre, we're able to go through and slam wide receiver values in the coming rounds. You're able to get Chris Olave in round 4 of these casual leagues. Whereas, I mean, if you were in an underdog draft, Chris Olave goes in the middle of the second round. In round 5, you would be able to go out there and grab another very exciting wide receiver, whether that's DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, or maybe Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley goes in round 3 of those underdog drafts. If we're going to round 6, I mean, this is a range where you can still get someone like Mike Williams. Round 7, you could still grab Drake London. Round 8, you could still grab Michael Pittman or Brandon Ayuk. So I think it makes so much sense for this year. You understand the platform that you were on. You try to map out where the middle round values are, and then you go with the opposite position in the early rounds so you're able to accumulate those middle round values. So in the casual redraft leagues, based off the historical data and also the way that ADP is situated as of today, I would highly recommend you going through, grabbing running backs early, then pivoting over to wide receivers in the middle rounds. Whereas if you were in those underdog drafts with us, which you know we're doing every single day in the live stream, that's what everybody's trying to do. So you almost have to zig when they're zagging. You almost have to go in the opposite direction and grab wide receivers early because, hell, you're not going to see, Joe Mixon go in round 3 in an underdog draft, right? He goes in round 3 of these casual redraft leagues, but you're going to get him in round 5 of your underdog draft. But I hope this was useful for a lot of people, regardless of where you were drafting, and how we can try to use the wisdom of the crowds and the historical data to make better decisions in our fantasy football draft. Of course, if you liked it, go down there, drop a like in this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to get into a fantasy football draft with us, you know we are drafting literally every single day on Underdog Fantasy. And go sign up, use promo code FLOCK. They're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Plus, you'll get my 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com. Hell, it's best ball, no time commitment at all during the year. So it's just a great place to pick up some extra drafts and have some fun while you prepare for your main redraft league. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you. And I really hope I get to draft against you in an underdog live stream later today.